The Irish are known for many things. They're known for being a little dramatic. In fact, it was very common thought at that time that the women were not domesticated until the 1800s. I love how they pointed out the women, but they're very emotional. They put their heart on their sleeves. They struggle. They have the famines, the potato famines, and even if you go to Ireland to this day, you'll see a new family cottage on a family farm, and behind it will be a rubble of a house. And we'd say, well, why don't you take it down or do something? And they say, no, that reminds us of the time our family almost died from the potato famine. But they don't blame it on the potato famine. They actually blame it on the English. The English took the good potatoes during the famine, and they weren't able to receive. But that's another story. They're known for being dramatic, for having a flair, for having a sense of drama and excitement and adventure at the best of times. And so here's W.B. Yeats. He was one of the famous people who have written for them, and he has a bit of drama. And I'm going to read you a little bit of an excerpt from the Player Queen. And here, even in this Old English, I think you will be able to pick up on some of the drama. And you listen to the parts where it talks about one's heart, one's choices, one's crossroads. First player says, the players of this town are jealous. Have we not been chosen before them all? Because we are the most famous players in the world. It is they who have stirred up the mob. The second player says, it is of me they are jealous. They know what happened in Zondu. At the end of that old play, The Fall of Troy, Kabula Khan sent for me and said that he would give me his kingdom for such a voice and for such a presence. I stood before him dressed as Agna. And when, in this great scene at the end, I had reproached Helen for all the misery she had wrought. The first player replies, my God, listen to him, aka he's quite egotistical. It is not always the comedian who draws the crowd. Am I dreaming? Or was it not I who called 6 times before the curtain? Answer me that. So it is a play of egos. And when if you were called 6 dozen times, see, the Irish kind of have this habit of, you put a number out there and we'll exaggerate the number. You know, you fishermen know about this. The players of this town are not jealous because of the crowd's applause. They have that themselves. The unendurable thought, the thought that wrenches their hearts, the thought that puts murder into their minds, is that I alone of all the world's players, have looked as an equal into the eyes at Kabula Khan. The stage manager finally steps up, and he says, stop quarreling with one another and listen to what is happening out there. There is a man making a speech, and the crowd is getting angrier and angrier, and of which they are jealous of, I don't know. But they are all coming this way, and maybe they'll burn this place down as if it were Troy. And if you will do what I say, you will get out of this. First player then replies, must we get dressed like this? It's a joke, guys. Like, the house is about to be burned down on fire, and he's wondering what he should wear for such an event. The second player replies, there is not time to change, and besides, should the hill be surrounded? We can gather in some cleft of the rocks where we can be seen only from a distance. They will suppose we are a drove of cattle or a flock of birds. So the second player tries to remind the first player, rather than be worried about what we are wearing, perhaps we should hide in such an occasion as this. Septimus finally replies, leave me to die alone. I do not blame you. There is courage in red wine, in white wine, and beer, and even in thin beer sold by the Blair-eyed potboy in the bankrupt tavern. but there is none in the human heart. When my master, the unicorn, bathes by the light of the great bear, and to the sound of the tamers, even the sweet river water makes him drunk. But it is cold. It is cold. Alas, it is cold. Nona replies, I'll pile these upon your back, and I shall carry the rest myself, and so we shall save all. Septimus brings up a point. It seems that depending on the situation or the moment, it's easier for people to be brave, right? It's easier to be brave if you're under the influence of a good beverage. It's easier to be brave when you're standing in a crowd of people that agree with you and you're all there for the same mission. It's easier to be brave when you feel like this is going to be successful. Like if you make a few steps, you're going to win this and it's going to be great. There, it feels easier to be brave. But is there bravery in the human heart for the times that matters? Is there bravery in the moment, in the peace, and the part of us that needs, doesn't want to, but needs to do the right thing? There is this story. Have you ever heard of St. Patrick's Battalion? Funny enough, American history books don't like to write about it, but it's a true story. And I'm about to share one with you. Long ago, we talked about the potato famine, and they were starving and hungry, and so, given at a time when you're Catholic and you have 12 kids, you might try to scrounge up enough to send a few on a boat trip across to America, where it's rumored there's so many jobs you could work too. You can even make your wife work a job while she's raising your 10 kids, because she doesn't have soap operas at this time, so she probably has some time to do matchbox making or whatever she's doing. There's just rumored to be work to be had, an opportunity to grow, and of course the relatives already sent to America, they don't help the situation per se. They do this thing where you go to a studio, you put on fancy clothes, you take your best picture. You might know this today as fake Facebook. You heard that term? They show the best presentation of themselves and they send it to the mother country. So those in the mother country think, America, they did it, they're successful. Look, he has shoes that fit. Everything must be glorious there. Yes, fake Facebook, we are on our way to America. They get to America, this real group of men, and they realize that Irish and black need not apply. Why would you want to hire an Irishman? After all, we just talked about those women. They're dramatic, and we know the boring English don't want us to have our opinions or feelings. And I say that because my husband's English, so, you know. We're not allowed to have our drama, we're not allowed to have our heart, we're not allowed to express ourselves in public. They get tired of this country, they're not wanted, they're degraded, they're put down. The president at that time is struggling to get his country together. They're a new country, they're not always listening, and lo and behold, they're always fighting, like, I don't know, right now. And this president's struggling, and he says, listen, if you do a good job, blah, 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 we'll extend more land to people who want to go out west. But we were already kind of at a brink. So what did we do? We decided to take on Mexico, to take some of their land, to give to the whites. And lo and behold, if you were one of those Irishmen who couldn't get a job, you could join the army. Join the army, might get some land, might get some food for your pocket, life might get a little bit better. So the Irish took to the military. I always find this part of history fascinating, because I do think the details matter. If you look at a lot of Scottish kilts, they'll have their original color of the kilt, but there'll be a streak of red thrown into the fabric, and it's to show the blood lost here in America. Turns out we make great warriors. We're loyal. We love those we stand next. So they go to fight this war. They think it's to fight against the Mexicans who broke treaties and boundaries and blah, blah, blah. But truthfully, it was us to take their land. It was us to take something from them. And these Irishmen who to join the armies. They get up there, they learn how to shoot in the battles, and they witness some of the most horrific things. They see nuns, churches, people being brutally abused and taken advantage of, people that they're sacred to them. Churches, people that have given their life to God, gardens that have been grown to care for communities, ransacked, mistreated. The Irish soldiers went home after a few of these battles and could not believe what they saw. They didn't know what to do. Their life was at a crossroad. They had relied on their God and their faith to see them through famines, to see them across an ocean, to see them in a foreign country where they're not loved or appreciated. And now they find themselves in a war they don't believe in, a war they know that goes against God. And they don't know what to do. We're going to stop there. And we're going to go back to the Easter story, because we can't explain what happened later without first understanding what happened on that Easter story. See, prior to that Easter morning, after Jesus dies, we know that Peter denies Jesus. I don't know who you're talking about. We know that Judas has already taken his life. We know that time has gotten terrible. We know that all of our dreams have washed away into the streets of the Roman Empire, to be forgotten, to be obliterated, to be taken. And the disciples didn't feel good enough. They didn't. They failed their God. Their God died. He was supposed to rise on the third day, but as you can tell from the literature, they didn't believe that was going to happen either. They didn't hold to that knowledge, because so many terrible things, so much grief had taken. They had joined the side of the Roman citizens. They had become the people and the kind of community they were trying to change. So the women don't go to see Jesus alive. The women don't go but for any other reason to pay their respects. Just as if someone were to go to a cemetery to pay their respects for those that have served in the wars, you don't go to see them alive. In fact, if you see them alive, you're probably going to need to talk to a doctor. The reality is you go to pay your respects. The women came to pay their respects. Hope had ended. Their cause was gone. The Romans won again. The time we know, just from the bodies we dig up, 60% of the people who lived at that time did not know where their next meal would come in the next 3 days. They were in a constant state of malnutrition, a constant state of hunger. I don't know, like those in the potato famine. They didn't know where their next meal would come. Some had even joined up with the Romans, some among them. They didn't know who to trust. They didn't know whether or not they could trust their friend next to them, the disciple next to them. Why would you trust somebody next to you if they're going to turn on you? If it's going to be you hung on the cross, you made a display. Because we look at the cross and you forget at times, this was supposed to scare you. It wasn't outlawed until 400 years after Jesus dies. 400 years. This was meant to scare you. And I don't know about you, but it sounds like I might be scared to die that way. They were scared. Their dreams broken and forgotten. And they come that morning to pay their respects. And they're so grief-stricken, they think they see a man, but it's an angel. They can't see that God is before them, presenting their hopes and dreams. Just as they've given up on the world, just as the darkness has shadowed and people have gone on beyond their days, God was still working, happening. So when the women come and say, listen, we saw these angels, we thought he was a man, we were there, blah, blah, the men There's no Romans, I promise. They didn't know who to trust. They didn't know who to believe. People that they had witnessed miracles with, done great works with, have now become the enemy. People that they were meant to love and to care for were now the enemy. And they felt more alone than they ever had. And then they remember these old scriptures. And scriptures can be used for both good and bad, as we know. People can cherry pick things from scriptures to make you feel terrible. People can cherry pick from scriptures to make you feel good. But it's not what the scriptures are doing to you, but what are they doing within you. And that can only happen between you and your God and your good enough faith. So the people left the tomb, knowing that God was among them again and on the move. That God was the Lord of the dance, and things were happening. They didn't know how or what. But if any of you have ever gone through some serious darkness in your life and wondered how on earth could God make this okay, then you too know what it feels like to be a disciple on Easter morning. What is happening? What is changing? What am I going to do when I hit the crossroad? Am I going to use my faith to love my neighbor? Am I going to use my faith to forgive my friends? Am I going to use my faith to love everybody, including the annoying Roman soldiers? Am I going to use my faith for good? Or not? So the people were left there Easter morning, not sure what to do. They too were at a crossroad. We go back to that crossroad where the Irish soldiers stood there, not sure what to do. Could they really go against their God? Was their faith really so weak as to not stand up for what they believed in? So the soldiers made an incredible decision. They decided, these red-headed soldiers from Ireland decided to fight for Mexico. How many of you have never heard that one? Hundreds of soldiers fought for Mexico. Hundreds of Irish soldiers fought in the Mexican Wars, and they called them the red-headed soldiers from afar. And they had this Aaron go broad, and if you look to this day, they still have original flags from it. It's the Irish, let's see, the Irish heart, sorry. The Irish heart, and above it, the Mexican big eagle, right? So it's this beautiful sign. And to this day, did you know Mexico celebrates St. Patrick's Day? Yes! They have it. They say Aaron go bra. And they came alongside and they supported their neighbors and they loved them and they defended the churches and they stood up for what they believed in. And they did it knowing they were going to die. They made a choice at that crossroad. They could either live their life chasing land that wasn't theirs. They could either live their life having food they've always wanted, or they could stand up for the weak. They had to make a choice, and they did. And when it came to their final battle scene, there was many defiant moves. If you read that you're only going to find in Mexico, history books, but you're going to find these stories of them laying the flags out, people dying with pride on that final scene where they knew they wouldn't make it out alive. And there the Irish died, and the hundreds that were taken before, the commanders, the American commanders said, we will make an example of these deserters. We will make an example of these. And history will forget them. And so, like Jesus hung on a cross to die before everybody and bleed out to die, so hundreds of Irish soldiers were put to death. And he promised them that no one would remember their story. Their story would not see the light of day. 200 years, we're still telling the story. 2,000 years later, we're still telling this story. Why do we tell this story? Why? between you, your God, and your faith. What's inside your heart? That's the crossroad we live at today. We tell these stories because they matter. Because they matter to our faith, because of our hearts. Because we know deep down inside we're all going to have to make a choice. We're not going to feel brave. We may not feel brave from the spirits or from our friends, but you're going to have to make a choice. Jesus made a choice to love you, to care for you, to come back. Jesus made a choice to love the rich and the poor, the Roman, the Jew, the pagans. Jesus made a choice to love you all. And so on this Easter morning, we are asked to choose love and hope. Give God a chance to do something. Give God a chance to give you eternal life into something that matters. Choose God. Choose your faith. Choose to be the people that you are all called to be and can be. Especially when you don't feel brave. Especially when conversations get hard or tricky. Especially when you have to dig through old history books that are being forgotten. Because the details matter. Because you matter. Because what we do does make a difference. Easter matters 2,000 years later because we matter 2,000 years later. My prayer for you all this year is to stay brave, to keep listening to your heart. We have in your bulletins, these are seed paper. So inside of them are little lavender seeds. And you can plant them, and you can be reminded that the pages of your Bible can either grow life or grow nothing at all. But I promise you that this matters. That the life we live matters. And just like the seeds we talked about, good enough faith, for a seed to grow, something must die. The flower that once bloomed must die, but the life and the spirit lives on. And that is good enough. You don't have to see how the story ends. You don't have to worry that people will forget. Have faith. Know what you're doing matters. Make the right choice. And live. Live. Don't live in fear. Don't be afraid. Don't let others make you question your morals. Live your life. Follow your heart. We've been doing it for thousands of years. And we will continue to do this for thousands of years. Amen?